Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial for the Learning Lab on C++ programming. So in this tutorial we're going to be learning how to pass some parameters to the function and also how to return some values from the functions. So in the last tutorial we have learned about what is a function, what is function prototyping, how to use a function in our program. So just for the demonstration purpose, I'm gonna do the function prototyping here. Let's say our function is not gonna return any values, void, then the function name display, and let's say this function is gonna take two parameters. So if your function is taking any parameters while function prototyping, what you guys can do is you guys can specify the type of data the function receives as parameters. So here this display function is gonna take two parameters and that two parameters of type integers. So I'm gonna write int, then comma, int. So here the statement means that display function is not gonna return any values and this function is gonna take two parameters and each of them are of type int. So if your function is taking any other type of data as a parameter, then you guys can specify the data type used for that here. Okay, next after this main function I'm gonna define the body of our display function. So it's gonna be void, then display, then a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly braces. Here we need to specify the variables that are gonna receive the parameters passed to this display function. So these functions are gonna take integer values, two parameters, that's why it's gonna be int, let's say a variable name a, and comma int variable b. So this variable a and b are gonna receive the parameters passed to this display function, and here inside this display function we're just gonna print out a plus b. Alright, I'm gonna save it right now. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to call this display function in our main function. So I'm gonna use display, and as a parameter we need to pass two values. So these two values are going to be of type integers and I'm going to pass 20, 30. So now what happens is when this display function is called, this 20 will be copied to this variable a and this 30 will be copied to this variable b, and here this function is going to print out a plus b, which is 50. I'm going to save it, build and run this. So you guys can see we got 50. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna print out the values of a and b just for the demonstration purpose. So it's gonna be cout a and line. I'm gonna copy this and paste it in the next line and make it b here, and I'm gonna build and run this. So you guys can see 20 copied to the variable a, 30 copied to the variable b, and 20 plus 30 equal to 50. So this is how you guys can pass the parameters to the functions. So you guys can pass no parameters, which we have learned in the previous tutorial, or 1, 2, or as many parameters you guys want, you can pass that. Alright, the next thing is how to return a value from a function. So if your function is returning any value, we need to specify that in our function prototype. So here, you guys can see the main function. We specified that our main function is going to return an integer value. So if our display function is returning a integer value, then we need to specify int, or floating point value, then float. Similarly, this case is going to be int. So I'm going to write int. And once we specify in our function prototype that our function is returning some value, we should return that value here. So here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this cout statement which does a plus b, and I'm gonna use the return keyword. So this return keyword is used to return any values from a function. So you guys can see here in main function we have returned a value of 0, but in this case in display function we're gonna return a value of a plus b and add a semicolon there. And what happens here is this display function is going to take two parameters a and b, and it's going to return a plus b to the caller of this function. So this display function is going to return the value a plus b. The next thing that we need to do is, in our main function we need a variable to receive the value returned by the display function. That's why it's going to be int result, and we're gonna store the return value in our result variable. So it's gonna be result equal to display 20 and 30, and then we're gonna print out the result. So it's gonna be cout, and I'm gonna say result is, then result. Alright, I'm gonna save it, build and run this. Okay, and also here we need to change this one to int, because our function is returning some values. Alright, I'm gonna build and run this again. So 20, 30, and the result is 50. So one more time, a function can return any values and it can take the parameters. So if your function is taking any parameters while function prototyping, we need to specify the type of data is received as a parameter, and also if your function is returning any value, then we need to specify that while function prototyping, and also while defining that function we need to do that. And to return some value from a function, we're going to use the return keyword in C++. So this is it, guys. This is about how to pass some parameters to the function and also how to return value from a function. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any doubt, don't hesitate to ask us, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.